Nosotros decíamos que habían 3 caminos nada más para la ganga. Era cárcel, muerte y hospital.
November 12, 2015. A bloody war broke out inside the walls of one of Honduras's most brutal prisons. The final tally was 11 deaths and 31 injured. The bodies were left unrecognizable. Some lost their heads. Others didn't have their ears, and many were even fed to a wild dog. The victims were all members of the notorious MS-13 gang, and the perpetrators belonged to their #1 rival, a force equally as brutal and heinous, the 18th Street Gang.
Sabemos que somos gangsters, porque no hay nada fuera de la 18.
18th Street Gang.
The 18th Street Gang has found another member. His name is Little Mousy. He's only 9 years old.
18th Street Gang, or Barrio 18, is a transnational criminal organization that started as a small street gang in LA in the 1950s and became the first multiracial, multi-ethnic gang in America. Unlike traditional cartels, the gang has no single leader or godfather. Instead, veteranos oversee a chaotic network of cliques, enforcing strict rules that, if violated, can result in an 18-second beating or even execution. One striking signature of the 18th Street is that it resembles a children's army. Gang recruiters actively seek out vulnerable middle school students who are struggling or appear to be on the outskirts of gang life. These recruiters paint a glamorous picture, promising power, excitement, and action to lure those kids in.
A mí es un orgullo que la raza me respete, porque hago cosas que pues sí para mi edad ni las debería de estar haciendo.
Sure, those kids might think they're unstoppable for a while, going around killing people and grabbing whatever they want with their power trip, but sooner or later, the sobering moment will arrive when they're jolted by the harsh reality of a lifetime spent behind bars or the fateful encounter with the Grim Reaper himself. And while their main source of income is street-level distribution of drugs, the gang has also been linked to murders, assaults, arson, extortion, human trafficking, kidnapping, robbery, weapons trafficking, and the list goes on. In Los Angeles alone, an average of 1 person falls victim to an assault or robbery by 18th Street members every day. However, the gang poses the greatest threat in Central American nations, where weak governments and a larger gang presence have allowed them to unleash extreme levels of violence. In the US, joining the gang may require completing a risky task, such as transporting drugs. In Central America, loyalty is acquired by spilling blood. If you want to join the gang, you have to kill people to get in.
18th Street Gang kill thousands per year. They use extortion to control entire neighborhoods,
leading people to flee for their lives.
Now, you can imagine that the individuals belonging to this gang aren't simply hardened criminals. They're cold-blooded killers with no qualms about taking a life. So let's take a closer look at some of the deadliest hitmen within the 18th Street Gang. Rocky Lee Glover. 18th Street started out as part of the Clanton 14 gang, formed back in the 1920s in LA. However, Clanton members rejected the 18th clique once they figured out the real motive of their leader, Rocky Lee Glover, which was allowing non-Mexicans in. And so with his followers, Glover decided to break away and form his own gang, 18th Street. Since then, the two gangs have been bitter rivals, each willing to do whatever it took to prove their dominance, even if it meant turning the streets of LA into a war zone. And unfortunately, the innocent always end up paying the price. September 18th, 1980, Michael Mitchell and his wife Dora were in their second-floor apartment when they heard several shots being fired in the early morning hours. Michael, being the brave soul that he was, rushed to the balcony to check what was happening and see if someone needed help. Meanwhile, Dora went to change her clothes in the bathroom. However, when she returned, she was met with a horrific sight. Her beloved husband lay lifeless on the ground, having been struck by a long-distance gunshot. His killer was none other than Rocky Lee Glover, the leader of the notorious gang that had been causing chaos on the streets of LA. Rocky had mistakenly believed that Michael was a member of the Clanton gang. Without a second thought, he fired several shots at Michael, ending his life in an instant. Rocky was arrested a month later and was sentenced to 25 years to life. Where Rocky is now is a mystery. Some say he's still in prison, while others claim he's been released. But one thing is for sure, his legacy continues to this day, for his loyal followers have taken up his mantle, and they're still terrorizing communities across the globe. Catarino Gonzalez Jr. August 9, 1998. LAPD officer Filbert Cuesta had been on patrol with his partner Richard Gabaldon when they saw several gang members enter a wedding reception. While they waited in their car for backup, a hail of bullets slammed into their car. Officer Cuesta was shot in the head and died the next day, leaving a wife and 2 young children, while Gabaldon was mildly injured. The perpetrator of this crime was 23-year-old Catarino Gonzalez Jr., an 18th Street gang member. During his trial, Gonzalez claimed that he thought the officers were there to arrest him for violating his probation. However, the circumstances of the crime suggest otherwise. Gonzalez was on felony probation for a drug-related conviction at the time of the shooting. And well, do you want to take a guess on who was the arresting officer on the case? Filbert Cuesta. When Gonzalez spotted Cuesta sitting in the patrol car, he decided to commit his crime in the most cowardly way possible. He snuck around the entire block and executed him from behind. To make matters worse, just 5 days before the shooting, Gonzalez was arrested again on suspicion of drinking in public. The next day, officers found spray paint that they believed indicated Gonzalez was planning to retaliate against the police. And so, as expected, the judge imposed the maximum prison sentence against Gonzalez, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And to this day, he remains behind bars, where he'll spend the rest of his life alongside the next hitman on our list. Juan Pablo Murillo. The 18th Street Gang is notorious for using violence and intimidation to control narcotics distributions in various districts throughout Los Angeles. They demand that narcotic suppliers and street dealers pay rent in exchange for permission to sell drugs in their territories, as well as protection from rival gangs. Even street vendors selling legal goods are required to pay rent to operate in these areas. Failure to pay this rent results in violent consequences, including orders of elimination. September 15, 2007, a street vendor who refused to make a $50 rent payment to the gang was targeted to be killed by Juan Pablo Murillo, a notable gang member at that time. In broad daylight, Juan fired several bullets at the vendor, who ended up surviving the attack. However, Luis Garcia, a 23-day-old infant sleeping in a stroller next to the vendor, was not as fortunate. Juan was arrested and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole to pay for his heinous crimes for the rest of his days. Although he's not the only one on our list with a tendency to shoot first and ask questions later. Pedro Espinoza. Jamil Shaw, a Los Angeles high school junior, was a multi-talented student athlete. He excelled in football, basketball, baseball, track, and even had a passion for playing the piano. Jamil was also participating in a rigorous football training program designed to prepare top high school players for college ball and potentially a career in the National Football League. His remarkable skills had garnered attention from prominent colleges, making his future seem to brim with possibilities. However, tragedy struck on a fateful day when Jamil's life was cut short by 18th Street gang member Pedro Espinoza. March 2, 2008, Jamil was returning home from his daily training. He was walking from the bus stop when his father called him, and Jamil told him he was only 3 blocks away. Suddenly, 2 Hispanic men jumped out of a car and confronted Jamil, asking him what gang he belonged to. When he didn't answer quickly enough, Espinoza shot him in the stomach. Jamil fell to the ground and tried to cover his head with his hands, but Espinoza wasn't done yet. He shot him again through his hands with the bullet traveling to his face. Jamil's father heard the gunshot, ran outside, and held his son in his arms as he took his last breath. Within an hour of Jamil's murder, Espinoza was found and apprehended by the police. He was charged with first-degree murder, and on May 23, 2012, he was given the death penalty. Espinoza told the authorities he believed Jamil's red Spider-Man backpack linked him to an opposing gang, and without a hint of remorse, he said he was willing to kill for his gang, even if it meant going to death row.
Y por ella vamos a morir, ¿va? Y por ella estamos viviendo. Porque no hay nada fuera de la 18.
Within the realm of the 18th Street Gang, new recruits are taught the importance of unwavering loyalty and the willingness to sacrifice their lives to serve the gang. They're assured their fellow members will always stand by their side, forging an unbreakable bond. However, what do you think happens when a member dares to betray this sacred code? To put it simply, they don't live to tell the tale. Walter Alfaro Pineda. October 24th, 2017. Jonathan Figueroa, a member of the 18th Street Gang, was ruled by a fellow member to travel with him by bus from NYC to Kingston, New York. When they arrived in Kingston, Jonathan met with other 18th Street members and hiked into Turkey Point State Forest. There, Jonathan was stabbed over 100 times. His ears were severed, and his neck was slashed. When the gang was done with him, they buried his body in a makeshift grave in the forest. Now you may be wondering what Jonathan could have done to provoke such a barbaric punishment. The answer lies in the unforgiving code of the 18th Street Gang.
Snitches get stitches.
Jonathan was suspected of the ultimate betrayal within their ranks, cooperating with law enforcement. The orchestrator of this heinous crime was Walter Alfaro Pineda, one of the veteranos responsible for overseeing the New York gang members. Alfaro ordered the killing to be recorded, intending to distribute the footage among other members, to act as a stark warning to any who dared to disrespect the gang's authority. Little did he know that this particular order would ultimately lead to his own downfall. The FBI managed to obtain the video, and everyone involved was brought to justice. And a year after the murder, Alfaro was deported to El Salvador when U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, found a warrant that indicated El Salvadoran officials wanted him for murder, organized crime, and extortion. Tragically, though, Jonathan Figueroa wasn't the last victim to suffer the merciless consequences of the gang's unyielding rule of treason. Jordan Ryan Moreno. November 29th, 2019. Montgomery County Police received a call about a suspicious situation in a remote wooded area in Maryland. A hiker had stumbled upon the lifeless body of 19-year-old Sarah Gutierrez Villatoro. Upon investigation, it was determined that she had been shot multiple times, and her death was ruled a homicide. Further investigation revealed that 8 members of the notorious 18th Street Gang had been spotted near Sarah's home on the same day as her murder. 3 weeks prior, they were also seen in the same location, searching for a woman they intended to kill. But what had Sarah done to earn the gang's wrath? Well, Sarah had been in a relationship with an 18th Street Gang member who suspected her of cheating. To make matters worse, he believed she was seeing someone from the gang's #1 rival, MS-13. And so Sarah's fate was sealed for nothing more than a whim. Police apprehended 4 individuals in connection with this brutal murder: Jordan Ryan Moreno, Jonathan Rivera Escobar, Giovanni Dominguez Escobar, and a 16-year-old named Rigoberto Machado, who faced trial as an adult. Moreno, serving as the group's leader, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, openly admitting to devising the plan that led to Sarah's demise. The details of the crime unfolded as investigators pieced together the tragic events. One of the conspirators, who also happened to be Sarah's boyfriend, called her, arranging a meeting on the evening of November 21st, 2019. Together, the gang members traveled, picking up Sarah in Washington, D.C., before heading to the desolate Maryland location. In that secluded wooded area, Moreno used a pistol to inflict fatal gunshot wounds to her face and head, mercilessly snuffing out her life. Now, after everything you've learned about the gang's countless crimes, you might think that there couldn't be anything worse. But brace yourselves, for we're about to delve into the most atrocious crime ever attributed to this ruthless gang. Fire and Brimstone. May 3rd, 1993. A 3-story building in the Westlake District in LA caught fire. The building was crammed with immigrants, some of whom lived a dozen or more to an apartment to stretch their incomes from low-wage jobs. As the flames spread, tenants tried to escape by scrambling down fire escapes and climbing down bed sheets tied to balconies. Mothers threw their babies out the window, hoping someone would catch them. People formed human chains to hoist residents down from the upper floors. Yet despite their valiant efforts, the outcome was devastating. Over 100 residents were left homeless, more than 40 suffered injuries, and the unforgiving flames claimed the lives of 10 souls, including 2 pregnant women and 7 innocent children. From the beginning, rumors circulated that the 18th Street gang members had started the blaze. The apartment complex was known for cocaine dealing, and the manager had enough and began reporting the activity to the police. Hence, the authorities concluded the gang must have wanted her eliminated. For years, the truth eluded investigators until 5 years later, a gang member arrested in an unrelated killing claimed he knew who started the fire. 1998, Rogelio Andrade and Alan Lobos, both 22 at the time, were charged with the callous crime. The duo were hardcore members of the 18th Street Gang and had numerous run-ins with the police. Lobos was already in state prison serving 15 years to life for a 1997 murder charge in the same neighborhood. However, the charges against him were dropped in 2000 after prosecutors said there was insufficient evidence tying them to the crime. Despite the police's tireless efforts, the case remained open with no prime suspects for 24 years. 2017, in a surprise breakthrough, the police announced that they had arrested 3 suspects, 2 men and a woman, capping decades of investigation into one of the worst arson fires in LA history. And guess what? They were all members of the 18th Street Gang. They all pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and their gang affiliation. That makes us think about the 2 men arrested in 1998. What if they were really involved as well? After all, there's no smoke without a fire. Unfortunately, the case has been closed and we may never know for sure. However, what we do know is that the FBI estimates there's 65,000 members of the 18th Street Gang continuing to sow chaos in the streets of the US, Mexico, and Central America. And only time will tell what other tragedies they'll be responsible for.